So, the question remains, will Magical Twilight Episode 2 hold up to the quality of Episode 1? Find out with me after the title. Alright, so we made it through Episode 1 of Magical Twilight. I thought it was fine. It was a perfectly wonderful little softcore piece of anime, erotica, whatever. Although very light on the erotica. I am curious if the quality of the animation is going to hold up into episode 2. Because sometimes, they use a good chunk of the budget on the first episode to make it really appealing, to get people back. So there's a chance we're going to see a dip in quality, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to get ready, settle in, watch episode 2, and I'll come back to you with my thoughts. Now, I might come back wearing different clothes because I'm watching this at 9 at night, and I'm old, and I'm probably going to watch it, and then go to bed. And then I will give you my thoughts in the morning. Also, I'm going to be watching it on my TV downstairs, because this one is not extremely shocking or even all that explicit, so I feel like that's probably safe. But my poor husband is going to have to listen to a lot of anime moaning, so pray for me. All right, guys, I'll see you on the other side of the episode.
Close. There we go.
All right, we are on the other side of Magical Twilight episode 2. So I watched it last night, and it did exactly what I was expecting it to do. There is a slight drop in quality. We don't have as much dynamic animation as we had in the first one. You also see this become more explicit. It's a more structured hentai show. So what I mean by that is, in the original episode, in the first episode, you had little snippets of sex scenes, but nothing really developed. In this one, you have 3 distinct scenes that are longer. They're not long. These scenes are maybe 45 seconds, but that are longer and go through more set steps of including specific content. So it did definitely become more of a typical hentai. At the same time, it is still fairly tame compared to especially some of the shows that are to come, but just what was around at the time. This is the fluffiest of the fluff. This is entry-level smut. And I'm not, again, complaining. I remember, this is probably why I remember the show being a little spicier, though, because this is kind of what I was remembering. It also makes it a little more dull. But in doing so, with the increase in the erotic content, they introduce something from 90s hentai that I love, which is hide the dong. Okay. So, for those who are not familiar, Japan has very strict laws when it comes to depictions of genitalia, specifically pubic hair, but that also includes just genitalia in general. When these titles are released in Japan, any depictions below the waist are usually blurred. Now, what they do today is they will use digital censoring where it'll pixelate out the offending areas. Then, if that is sold overseas digitally, that pixelation is then removed and everything is drawn and in graphic detail. Also, the pixelation is done so that it is very clear what you're looking at. It's just slightly obscured. Well, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, specifically outside of animation in the world of pink films, I mentioned them before, they would use something called optical blurring, which was a floating cloud over the genitals to hide the fact that the actors were, 1, not actually having sex, but 2, to hide any potential offending pubic hairs or slip-ups. They carried that over into hentai. So when you're seeing these, sometimes you'll have things where they just do not show anything below the waist, which is kind of what we had in the first episode. They will show very abstract views of certain pieces of the body. We do see that here is female genitalia becomes this glowing black void. It is very weird. I don't know why it was glowing. Might want to get that checked out. But the other thing they would do is try to hide the penis. In this one, they just make it invisible. It is just not there. You can see through it. There is something that the characters are interacting with, but we don't know what. It is invisible. That is actually one of my favorites because it is so bizarre. In other instances, you will have things where it is glowing or it is blurred out like it is a full fog. Oop, I just bumped my mic. But this one they decided, let's just make it invisible. That is mostly relegated to specific shots. This is really, really still very tame, and you're not seeing any like nuts going into bolts. It's pretty tame. But for a few shots, there is invisible Wang. And I cackled because I forgot that was a thing that used to happen in old hentai. And I have a feeling I'm going to be seeing more of it as I move forward. Now, if I'm watching something, so I have some shows where I have the American release, or the files that I got are based off of the American release. So those are fully uncensored. The Japanese files, or any show that I'm getting that was too old to uncensor, which is something that did happen, are going to be a little more interesting because the way they get around the censorship is sometimes quite hilarious. Okay, so enough about invisible ding-dongs. Let's talk about the show itself. So this episode, we get a transition from the initial plot where we have Chipple and Irene fighting over Tsukasa and their whole exam thing. At this point, Chipple and Tsukasa are pretty much an established couple, although Irene isn't happy about it and she still wants him. So you have that tension, but we're moving them out of the city, away from society, to a hot spring. Because why not? What's an easy way to get characters into intimate situations and out of their clothes? Put them in a hot spring. It's Sex Comedy 101. So Chipple arranges it so that Tsukasa wins a trip to this hot spring because he just got into the college of his choice, his university of his choice, and they're celebrating. Well, Irene tags along and makes the trip difficult by blowing up the train that they're on because she's jealous because she heard them doing it in the bathroom of the train. Now, I have to say, that is one of the most spacious train bathrooms I have ever seen. In real life, a train bathroom, if it could fit two people, would not accommodate lovemaking. It would most likely just be stand, face each other, and hope you don't suffocate. But they manage that. So Irene blows up the train. Our heroes have to trudge through the woods to escape as not to get arrested and end up at a different hot springs than they were intended to go to. And this one is run by a mother and daughter. I don't remember anyone's names. They didn't really make great impressions of as characters. They're not really in this all that much. They serve their purposes and we'll get to their purposes. But they go to this kind of rundown hot spring inn and they're like, well, we don't have a reservation, but if you have any rooms, and so they end up staying there. And of course, the battle between Irene and Chipple keeps up. They're very jealous of each other. Irene wants Tsukasa because she thinks that's her key to getting her license to be a practicing white witch. And Chipple just likes Tsukasa. She has feelings for him, so she wants to be in a relationship with him and does not want her rival frenemy sleeping with him. Makes sense. And we get a lot of those two fighting. That is actually the majority of the comedy from this episode. I have to say, a lot of it was actually funny. There's a scene where they're in the actual hot spring and they're fighting, and they're basically using their powers to, like, because it's hentai, arouse each other. And Irene's playing coy and being herself, and Chipple is having none of it, and she just psychically goes bam, and you just see Irene go down for the count. They have a big old fight. They blow a hole through the side of the hot spring into the men's spring, taking several of the men out in the process. But they also manage to exhaust their powers because it turns out the hot springs are not good for witches and it will deplete their powers. So those two's powers are out of the equation for the rest of the episode. Chipple is essentially out of the episode at that point too. She's too weak to really do anything, so she's just kind of sleeping and mumbling and very sickly. Which leaves Tsukasa open to have a late night hot spring tryst with the owner of the hot spring, who is this older woman. She's widowed, has been widowed for 7 years. She has a teenage daughter who is, I'm guessing teenage, but I'm guessing also probably like 18, 19, 20. just by the way it's written. And also the content that is in this. So she's having a hard time with her daughter. She's having a hard time with her life. And she decides Tsukasa is going to be the one to reawaken the woman in her. Because nothing says reawaken your sensuality like a bland cardboard cutout of a man. And they have their little tryst. And she's like, it was just this one night, which tells me it was not that good. But while that's going on, there's a very awkward moment where the daughter comes back. She's in the women's bath. Tsukasa's in the man's bath with the mom. And the daughter is looking through the slat at them. And she's like, what's happening? And like, how bad is sex ed in Japan where she doesn't know what is going on over there? And of course, she gets all hot and bothered because, did VC Andrews write this one? I don't know. And things happen. So you have that big whole thing. And then the episode just kind of wraps up at that point with the cliffhanger of, is Chipple going to get her powers back? There's a little side story with Irene where she runs into a man who is also staying at the inn. He's around Tsukasa and Chipple and Irene's age. He is a rare redhead, so he stands out. And he seems very hesitant and kind of hateful towards the women until Irene gets him to talk, and he reveals that the woman that he loved ended up becoming a prostitute at a brothel that he worked at. And he just felt so betrayed because she decided to choose a career path that meant that he could not be the only man that she was with. And so Irene's like, well, not all of us sell our bodies for money. Some just give it away for free. And she does. And yeah, that's basically the episode. As you can see, it is light, fluffy. There's not a lot there. This episode, more than the first, reminded me of why I didn't love this series. Now, I will say, I did laugh at a couple moments. And the dub on this one, the English dub, is actually quite good. The voice actress for Chipple is really energetic and enthusiastic. And the voice actress for Irene does a pretty good job too. Tsukasa doesn't have much to work with, but overall, the voice cast is really strong, and the material's light enough where I think they were able to get some solid voice actors. So it is quality. The animation actually looks really good. The character designs have been souped up a little from the first episode. They have a little more vibrancy to them. We have a little more differentiation between the body types and the faces and the hair. I liked all of that. My problem is the story part of it, which I don't expect a lot of story for a 30-minute show like this that is got a structure. It has to include a specific number of love scenes. It has to include, certain beats. But the story it's not that there wasn't enough. It just felt like what was there was so lackluster that I wasn't really engaged. Like I said, a few of the jokes landed. There were some funny moments, and it started out really well, especially the whole fight in the train with Irene blowing out a side of the train when she catches Tsukasa and Chipple going at it in the bathroom, and she's all jealous. Like, that part is funny. And then after they leave the train, the energy of the episode just drops. It just plummets. And it makes those last kind of like 20 minutes or 15 minutes really a slog to kind of get through. And it's not because of the increased love scenes, because the love scenes, like I said, are not long. They're like maybe a minute and a half. 45 seconds to a minute and a half. It's not like this is a bogged down 45-minute sex scene. It's a quick, roll in the hay. It's nothing that would stop the show in its tracks. And actually, because of the nature of the show, you expect it. So that wasn't my issue. It really just felt like the writers just did not care. That's more than anything. It felt like they were kind of like, we expended everything in the first episode, and now we have to drag this story out for 2 episodes. So, yeah, because this episode ends on the cliffhanger of, is Chipple going to get her powers back, or is she just going to be a human now? And the next episode is going to resolve that. And, of course, we're going to have Chipple and Tsukasa become the final couple, their endgame. But with all of these shows, it also is fitting into the other trope of Tsukasa is going to have to sleep his way through the female cast before getting to the woman he loves. And the funny thing to me is Tsukasa, again, is not a big old pervert. He definitely has a sex drive, but he's not like oogling every woman that comes his way. He's not like he doesn't have like the massive nosebleeds and stuff. He's a pretty normal guy. It's just that the women keep throwing themselves at him because he has the irresistible trait of not being an asshole. It's surprising how well that trait works. So, yeah. I mean, we do have to watch him go through all of the paces because I can guarantee you in the next episode, he's probably going to sleep with the owner's daughter. I'm guessing, and we'll see if my prediction is correct when we get into that episode. But he will probably have a love scene with Irene. Maybe, although maybe the stuff in the first episode already counts. But then, things are going to wrap up and he's going to be with Chibble. And that's just my guess on how it ends. I don't remember how it ends. I really don't remember a lot from these last 2 episodes. And again, now I understand why. At the same time, I am grateful that I am starting with this show. Because, as anyone who has any familiarity with hentai knows, you can be dropped into some extreme situations in these series. And while I am going to explore some more extreme shows, I did not want to start there. Because it's hard to be like... It's hard to start at Night Shift Nurses and work your way down. I'm very animated with my hands and I'm a little too close to my mic. So I'm glad I'm starting here. Because I do know the next show I have in line is much darker. Although content-wise, I don't think it's actually going to be much more extreme. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. It's very middle of the road. It's very much of its time. So again, like modern fans of hentai, you're probably going to look at this and be like, what is this PG-13 crap? Even though it's definitely not PG-13, but it's very, very mild and soft. It is funny. I think I made a joke in one cut. I don't know if I made it in the final edit about it being like the show Hot Springs Hotel being more explicit, which was a series on, I want to say Cinemax. It was a cable, like a pay cable late night series. And then of course in the next episodes, they move to a hot springs. And there is like a pattern. At some point, if these series go to a certain length, they're going to leave their main location and go to either the beach or a hot spring. It's guaranteed. Can Bunny Extra, which we're going to cover at some point, does that. Like the first 3 episodes are set in I want to say Tokyo, but they're set in a city. And then once that's kind of been exhausted, they just move everyone to the beach for the summer and have fun and go surfing and all of that stuff. So you very much have that. It's a very similar structure. It's very templated. And this feels that way. So, all right. Series is going to continue. Next week, we are going to be covering the final episode of Magical Twilight. And then after that, we are going to dip our toes into a pool of darkness. Although it's actually not one of the Of Darkness shows. It is Isaku. So, one more week of cute. And then we get into me trying to figure out how to talk about that show without coming off as a very insensitive ass. So, as I say on my other channel, I will say over here, love what you love, enjoy what you're reading and watching, and have an amazing morning, afternoon, or evening. And we'll see you guys in the next one, which drops Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, guys. Bye.